very grateful to Kenny, who actually reached out to me to do this. I usually don't do this because I am very product centric, right? And I like to concentrate. Sorry, that's if you hear any noise in the background, that's my team guys. I'm supposed to have a meeting after this, so they are lounging around doing what they're doing. But basically, I'm very product centric, right? And I try as much as possible to just focus on the product and ensure that we are making progress on that. And I usually don't. I don't think this is like the best time for me to be taking speaking engagements. But Kenny reached out, and Kenny is a very good friend, right? And so I just felt I had to honor that as much as possible. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm really glad to be doing this, and I hope it's as impactful as every one of you hope it will be, right? So I'm just going to dive straight into this. I have 30 minutes or less than that now. I am going to be very practical. I'm going to be very real with you guys. I'm not someone who likes to do aspire to perspire or aspire to Maguire kind of talk. That's not me at all, right? I can see that Minola is laughing, but I'm just very honest about it. Every single time I've given a talk, it has been straight to the point. I just tell you the reality of things, because that's how I grew up. That's how the people who mentor me and the people who have taught me, that's how they brought me up, right? They were very candid with me. They were very straight up with me, and it has helped me a whole lot. There's the whole lot of aspire to perspire and motivation and everything that you would get out there, but it does not contain the right information that you would need to actually succeed. And so some of the things I'm going to be saying might seem very straight to the point. They might seem very common. They might seem very brash at too as well, but it's the truth, right? And mostly, I've tried as much as possible to make the PowerPoint presentation as bland, as plain as possible, right? So that you don't get too invested in it. I'm not a PowerPoint guy, even though I know how to use my PowerPoint, but I just prefer to speak from wealth of experience and to speak from my heart, right? When speaking to people. And visual aid, PowerPoint is a visual aid, and probably you could use that to maybe remember what I've spoken about after this. But there's nothing so special about PowerPoint. I would rather that you just listen and that you just take away whatever you can from it. I would also be sharing a bit of my experience, how I started, so you would have an understanding of where I was and where I am at the moment. It would make much more impact, and then the things that I would be saying would be more impactful, would be more real to you when I actually speak, right? So let me share my screen so we can have this. Just share my screen for the PowerPoint, right? Okay. I hope everyone can see my screen, right? It's okay. Yeah. All right. We can all see my screen, right? Hi, Dami. You can just nod if you can see my screen. Okay, fantastic. So just to give you more like a heads up, or rather, I would backtrack. So I mean, you've probably seen my profile. You've seen all these wonderful things about me. And you're looking at me, you're thinking, hey, this guy is wonderful. This guy is this, and this guy is that. I'm just going to give you a backdrop of who I am or who I was, and then who I am now at this point. As many of you can see, I have a different color of skin from the rest of you. That was now I don't consider it so much something different, but then while growing up, it was a big deal for me, because there was a whole lot of backdrop, there was a whole lot of verbal insults, and that went along with having this color of skin, right? And it really impacted and it affected me negatively for the most part. And then I got into school. I've always had the dream to want to build something. I've always wanted to build something. I've always been a builder. But then it took me a long while to get myself free from the shackles of what people now call inferiority complex, and then to decide I was going to be better. Maybe I would share that story some other time, but then I'm just going to go straight to the takeaways. I'm actually a very smart guy. I'm not trying to blow my trumpet. It's just how it is. I'm naturally very smart. I'm naturally very intelligent. And so I did very well in school. In fact, I kind of like cheated the system in school because I didn't used to attend lectures as much. I could read and understand and pass, right? So that's what I did. Yeah. So I just felt like things would naturally just happen for me because I was really smart and I just had it covered. You know, I was a great conversationalist as well. So I hope you can hear me. I'm seeing movements. Okay. All right. So I got out of school and I didn't have a job for a year. Right. I was at home. I was jobless for a year. That was a very trying period for me, right? So I'm just going to share some of the lessons that I encountered from that point. So from that particular point in time, I moved from being jobless to or being unemployed at that time to actually heading a department in a startup in an FMCG firm, which I did for about a year and 6 months, thereabout. And then I moved into the banking sector. I started up my own businesses, two of my businesses, which actually failed in that time period. I moved into the banking sector, and after the banking sector, moved into tech. And from tech, basically, I now moved into a tech firm and then moved into another tech firm, which I am currently occupying the position of head of operations. And from there, I started up Pay.ng with a couple of my friends. So that's more like the lowdown of my history so far. I'm trying to make it as brief as possible. I'm saying it because some of the things that I'm going to say, I don't want you to think it's just, it's just something that someone just comes to say. It's my life's basically lessons from my life and lessons that I've learned so far. Okay, so I'm just going to go into it. I'll probably take much less time than just to run through some of these things, right? And maybe take a few questions if there are questions, and then move on so I can move on to other stuff. But yeah, you can see my screen. So you would see that I titled this session, How Can I Make Myself Employable? And if you can see the other part of my screen, or the very small characters in that are small characters, right? You see that I subtitled it the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, because basically that's all I want to tell you. Okay, so how can I make myself more employable? So I guess I'll just start here. Hang on. Okay. So I guess I'll just start here. So I decided I was going to start from this point because I feel like it's the base point for every single person who wants to do anything tangible. Employability is a decision that you have to make, and it's a decision to learn. It's important that you understand this because it will take you far, right? So most times when people talk about employability, they just dive into certain skills and certain things that you must have, certain qualities. I believe that employability actually starts from a decision. So you have to make a particular decision. That decision will then impact how you decide to move forward in life, right? So the first decision I believe that anybody who wants to be employable should make is to decide what you want to do with your life. This is like the most pertinent question in life. What do I actually want to do with the time that has been allotted to me? Now, it's very vital that you take the time out to make this decision, to think it through and then to make the decision. Why? Because it would impact every single aspect of your life. what you decide to do, what you decide to study, what you decide, or the kind of company you decide to keep, the kind of goals you decide to go for. It would affect the kind of results you have. It would affect the kind of future you would have. It would affect the kind of influence that you would garner. It would affect the kind of life that you would have in general. So most times we, as human beings, we are very action-oriented. So the first thing we want to do most times is to dive into a situation and begin to do stuff. No, you're always going to land in trouble if you take that approach. From my experience and from the experiences of many others that have considered, the first thing to do is to sit back and then decide, what do I want to do? For me, I had always wanted to build businesses. I had always wanted to build companies. I had always wanted to build organizations. And right from time, that's basically right from when I was 14, I've always wanted to do that, right? And so it was easy for me to come to a conclusion and say, you know what, I want to do this. Now, I had offers at the time. I had the offer to get into the Nigerian Customs Service. I had the offer to get into other paramilitary organizations. I had the offers to get into NGOs too as well. But I never really took those offers seriously because I already knew what I wanted to do with life. And what I wanted to do with life was to build for-profit organizations that would impact society and that would that would create a positive influence for the society, for the economy, and for standard of living of people, basically all around the world. And so because I had made that particular decision, I could then move in a certain direction. Now, I'll also give you the instance of a mentor of mine. I have a mentor who is actually a billionaire, and he shared his story of how he actually got there, right? He said one day he was actually working. He had a job in Lagos and he was working, and then one morning, he just decided that, you know what, that he wanted to be rich and that he wanted to be very wealthy. And so he went home and took stock of his life at that point. He was like, okay, so if I am going to be very wealthy, if I'm going to be very rich, there are certain skills that I would need, right? There's a certain mindset that I would also need. And so he took stock of what he had and where he wanted to go and the gap. Now, it's important that you actually take time out to do this because it will then inform how you act going forward, right? So the first step, I believe, for any single person who wants to be employable is to sit down and think. Now, you sit down, you think to yourself and say, what do I actually want to achieve? What do I actually want to do as a person? What is the result that I intend to get from life? Now, when you look at that, then you can take a realistic, honest appraisal of yourself and say, okay, who am I at this moment? Where am I at this moment, right? And if you actually do this correctly, you would see that there's a gap. Excuse me. You'd see that there's a gap from between who you are at this point and then who you're supposed to be, or the results that you're supposed to achieve. And so your job is to start bridging that gap. Now, you've made that particular decision. You will then realize that all through your journey in life, especially in your professional life, there is a virtue that you must have if you are going to remain employable and if you're going to succeed. You must make a decision to continue learning throughout your lifetime. Most people stop learning after they're done with school. I hear people who say they just graduated from school and then, they say something like, I'm never going to touch a book in my entire life anymore. I'm never going to learn anything in my entire life anymore. I think you're playing. I think you're not ready for the future, right? The learning actually never stops. And I feel like one of the things that we haven't stressed enough as a country and as a people is that school is not just going to school is fine, it's sweet, it's nice, right? It's not just to teach you a set of things. I feel like the agenda of what a school system should do is to teach you how to think and how to learn. If you can learn how to learn, right, you can do anything in life. The first job I ever had, I told you I was supposed to head the particular department for an FMCG, the supply chain department actually. I started up the supply chain department from scratch. In fact, I was the first and only employee of the supply chain department for the startup. I eventually grew it to a 11 person team. 11 person team before I left. And we did hundreds of thousands of tons in raw materials. We distributed products, over 1 million units of the products to over 12 cities in Nigeria, outside the country. We had such tremendous results. But you would be surprised to know that when I was offered the job, I knew nothing about supply chain. I didn't know Jack. I just knew nothing. I was like, in fact, when he was offered, I was like, what is supply chain? I know that's what supply chain is, right? But because I had put myself through a rigorous process of learning, it was easy for me to catch up. Now, I'm going to share my regimen, not because I want you guys to feel like I'm someone, but I'm just trying to make a point. Since about 2012, I read about 50 books a year. That's basically what my regimen is, right? And so since 2012 till this point, that's close to like 10 years, right? I've done over 500 books. I think it will be more because there are years where I've done close to 100 books. I've done 90, I've done 100. I think I've done 119 one particular year. So I have read close to like 700 books in the past 10 years. But I started that in 2012. So I kept pushing myself. So when it got to that time to learn something new, I could acquire the skills that were necessary because I was already a learning machine, right? So I had already put myself to learning so much that it was easy for me to learn new things. What I had to do was basically just go for courses, go for trainings, and I was up to speed on supply chain management. So I think that's one of the vital things that anyone who wants to be employable should decide to do. You should decide to be a learning machine because employability parameters actually change from decade to decade. And I'm going to explain. What made sense a few years back might not make sense now. The skills, and I'll get back to that everyone is raving about right now, might not be the skills that everyone is raving about in the next 3 years, in the next 2 years, even in the next year, right? So it's not like it's not like the past that you could stick with a particular thing for a long while, and still continue to be relevant. Now, things are fast changing. So you have to make that conscious decision to be learning. If that's the only thing that you can take away from this, I think I would have done you a big favor, right? You have to learn. You can't say to yourself, I don't know how to do this thing. I used to tell my people that there's nobody you can't tell me I don't know how to do this thing. What you're actually saying is, I don't want to learn how to do this thing. Because there's nothing in this world that you cannot learn to do, right? So it's a decision. Do I want to learn to do this thing or not? That's what employability is. You have to be able to adapt to situations. You have to be able to be flexible. You have to be flexible. You have to adapt to certain situations. You have to adapt to new knowledge, right? So it's the first thing that I would say to any single person. Learn as much as possible. Learn as much as possible. My first boss was my first interview. Well, for my first job, the interview was actually very fun because my boss was an American citizen. He just came into Nigeria and he wanted to set up this FMCG firm. And then we had this interview, right? And he was so fascinated. He was fascinated by me as a person because this was a young person. I think I was like 22 or so at the time, or 21, thereabout. And this was a young person, and we were having a conversation. And at the point, he just leaned back in his chair. He's like, I really like you. Like, I like the fact that you're actually very knowledgeable. I like the fact that you actually speak well. These are skills that I took time to learn and to refine, right? And so we ended up having an interview that lasted for close to like 2 hours. Now, the major interview was like 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and he was satisfied. But then we plunged into other different topics. So what do you think about this? What do you think about this? What do you think? And we just kept going back and forth, right? So if I had not built myself up to that particular point in time, Um, and to that particular level, I probably wouldn't have gotten that position because this is someone who has no past experience, no prior knowledge of even the field at all. And you're asking the person to head a particular department, to grow it, to introduce the standards that are going to be operational for the company, the processes, the procedures, the policies, every single thing concerning that department and how the department is going to run subsequently for as long as the company lives. It was all my job to put into place, right? And so if you're going to trust someone to do that for you, then the person has to actually be knowledgeable. Now, while I might not have had the requisite knowledge at that time, I was a learning machine, right? So it was easy for him to say, okay, we can take a risk on you. So I would feel like one of the important things I would say to any single person here is, if you want to be employable, you have to learn. You have to make a commitment and a decision to learn. I'll throw a question out there. This is April, right? What have you learned from January to this point? Right? If you've not learned anything, then you're not ready. That's what employability is, right? And that's the first step to being employable. So make a decision to learn. The slide here says if you're not willing to learn, then no one can help you. But if you're determined to learn, then no one can stop you, right? I didn't start out knowing how to build a company. I didn't start out knowing how to do many of the things that I know how to do now, but I was able to learn them along the way. And so if you two are willing to put in the work to learn, then definitely you would be able to go all the way too as well. So I would move on to my next slide. Okay, so from the guides that was sent to me, there was a particular line that said certificates or skills, which one is most needed, right? I don't think we should think in terms of that. To be honest with you, the world doesn't need another medical doctor. The world doesn't need another architect. The world doesn't need another businessman. The world actually needs solutions, right? And that's why I titled this slide, Problem is Profitable Business. The fact that there are issues in the world means that there's space for you. Now, this is not some motivational talk. I'm just being very upfront, right? The fact that there are issues that have not been solved means that there's a space for you to play in. The issue with most of us is that we want to pick areas, or we want to stick to areas that have a well-worn path, right? So we want to stick to somewhere that is already cleared. More like this thing is already normal, yeah. And so we're trying to live up to that standard of society. But then there are issues in society that need you to step in. And if you can actually step into those particular issues, and you would find out that you will do very well. So the company I'm starting, Pay, is it solves a need. We realized that over time, there are a lot of transactions that happen online. So you want to get something on IG or on Twitter, right? And there are vendors online vendors. And then what happens most times is that you send money to them and you expect, or you hope, or you pray that they'll be able to give you your product, right? Most times it doesn't happen. That's how scams happen. So it's either you get the whole what I ordered versus what I got, or you don't even have your money back at all, or you don't have a product at all. So we decided we're going to step into that situation and be more like a third party. So instead of paying directly to the vendor as a buyer, you pay to us, right? And we notify the vendor that, oh, hi, this person has paid for this particular service. Please send the goods over. And when the vendor sends it over, we then send the money to the vendor. Now, what happens if the vendor doesn't give you what you want? You receive your money back. What happens if the vendor doesn't send anything at all? You get your money back. So the possibility of a scam is actually taken away, right? So what I'm trying to say is that problems are things that you should focus on. So the world is actually in need of solutions, right? The world is in need of solution providers. So if the solution provider comes in the guise of a doctor, in the guise of a businessman, the world will accept. Now, for you to actually provide solution, you need skills. skills. And skill is not just a certificate. Skill is not just, I don't know how to actually put this in, but skill is more than a certificate, right? Skill is you refining what you can do. So it's you deciding that you're going to actually refine a particular skill set or a particular job that you can do. So most people actually just depend on their certificates, and then they just come out of school, so they feel like they know something. You don't know something. I saw this quote somewhere and it was really fascinating. It said, knowledge is not skill. Knowledge plus 10,000 hours is actually skill, right? 10,000 hours is like the estimate of what you have to practice 10,000 hours at the very least at a particular skill for you to actually be very good at it. So most people have not even gotten up to that number in terms of practice of their particular skill. And so you can't be employable without certain skill sets. So it's not that you get either a certificate or then you get a skill. Now, I can't tell you favor skill over certificate, because you can see that I have certifications, right? And I'm also a graduate, so I have certificates too as well. I also have certain skills that place me at the position in which I am in now at this point. So I would say a skill is a combination of certificates and then technical knowledge. And I would encourage you to do the best that you can do at both. Theory and then practical is what is needed for you to actually excel at anything. You have to understand in theory how this thing works, and then you have to put time to practice it out, right? If I was going for certificates mostly, I probably would have had a PhD by now, because when you've read over close to 700 books in the past 10 years, I think that would be enough to, if you're going to do research or if you're going to do anything, it's probably enough to get an MSc, it's probably enough to get a PhD if I decided to go through that line, right? So even though I might not have the certificates or an MSc or a PhD or an MBA, I think I have the equivalent of that, right? Which is one of the things that actually props me up anywhere that I go to. So it's important that you consume as much information as possible. Please be a consumer of information. It's important. It's and not just any kind of information, not just a wrong kind of information, but the right kind of information in the particular area in which you want to be skilled in. The goal really is that you become so good at what you do that you are in the top 10% in your field. That should be the goal for you. And I'm not just talking 10% in your field in Nigeria, I'm talking 10% in your field globally. So any single day you wake up and you're not in the top 10% of the field, it means that you still have stuff to learn. And that means you have to consume as much information as possible, and then you have to practice that information. You have to put yourself to active practice of that skill. Now, when you are a consumer of information and you take deliberate steps to practice the skill, you would realize that you are able to refine the skill faster. What most people do when they ignore information, and I'm choosing to call it information now, not certifications or certificates. What most people do when they ignore information is that they now have to work extra hard to get some of the results that had already been gotten. But if you've caught up on prior information, you can then build on that wealth of information to take you further. Or you can even refine that information. You can make faster use and better use of that information to make you faster, to make you better at what you do. So it's important that in as much as you have technical knowledge in a particular field, that you also pursue certifications. Yes, you pursue information consumption, right? So please, this has worked for me a whole lot, and I think it will work for anybody else, right? So I consume a whole lot of information. For me, it's not just in the field in which I'm interested in. I am a businessman, yes, but then I'm also interested in genetics. I'm interested in cosmology. I read a bit of astrophysics. I read religion. I have a far-ranging, even as much as Greek mythology, right? I try as much as possible in every aspect in which, or topic in which I'm interested in, to do a deep dive into that particular topic or into that particular category or into that particular field of knowledge. So when you're speaking with me, most times people are like, how do you know some of the stuff that you know? It's because I consume information, right? So it's important that you consume information as a person and that you build depth in your technical knowledge. Now, technical knowledge are those particular skills that you would need to perform on the job. Now, if you decide you're going to be a programmer, for example, you need to learn to code. That's technical knowledge, right? So you need to build proficiency in that, and you need to be very good. You need to spend time coding. You need to spend time, ample time, every single day on that particular skill set. And then you need to consume information to that skill set. You need to read books on programming. You need to read books on programming languages. You need to read books, every single thing that you can find in that sector. Read as much as possible and then practice as much as possible, right? So it would prepare you for the certain problems that you're going to meet and the opportunity to actually make solutions for people in that particular field or in what you want to do. So problem again is profitable business. Every single day that you wake up and that there are problems in society, you should be happy. You should be glad that there's a problem in society that I can solve. There's an avenue for me to actually be employable. So when people say I'm unemployed, I had to learn this. When people say that they are unemployed, they are not. I don't know how to put this, but you can't say you're unemployed when there are problems. The fact that there are problems actually mean that you can be employed at doing something. You just don't want to start from the minute. You don't want to start from something small, right? Most people just want to jump into something huge. If you don't have the opportunity to jump into something huge at the start, then start from something small. If you actually are a consumer of information and you refine your skill, people would actually figure you out. They would set you out. They would find you out, right? But you have to decide that you're going to put your hand to something. I think that's important, right? The first, like I talked about, the first job I ever had, it was a lot of work, but it was very little pay at the time. But I decided I was going to take it because I felt like it would really do me a world of good and I could put my skills to test. And it was from there I got poached into another company and another company and another company after that, right? Basically because I was very employable. I had the needed skills and then I had the needed information, right? So get the information, build technical depth, and then look for opportunities to apply your skill. Even if it's for free at a particular point, apply it. The goal is for you to be employable, to get something down, to chalk up something to experience, right? That you can then use going forward. I'll move into something else. So yes, there was also the part of this, from the topic I was giving, there was a subtopic that said, what are the skills that are in high demand? I'm going to answer this. It's a very cheeky answer, but it's the truth. Every skill is in high demand. The thing about the skill is how much are you willing to refine that skill for it to be in high demand. Call any particular skill you can talk about. Even if you're a blacksmith, right? There are blacksmiths that create works of art that are sold for millions of dollars. They are humble blacksmiths. They've not changed their MO. They are still using the forges. They are still using the tools of their trade. They are still blacksmiths. Many of us are talking tech, but these guys are still blacksmiths. And they make millions of dollars from one single creation. Why? Because they are the best in their field. So there's no particular skill set. Even cooking is a skill. Cooking is a skill in high. You can say, everybody cooks, but they are Michelin stars cooks. There are guys that have Michelin stars. I think those guys are the best of the best of the best, and they are very much in high demand. There is no field of human endeavor, right, that doesn't have a particular skill that can be in high demand. The issue really is how much are you willing to refine your skill to get to that point where that skill can be in high demand, or rather, where that skill will place you in high demand. Now, this is the question. So most people just want to do, okay, which skill is selling now? Tech. Okay, we just want to, let's run into tech, right? Let's just go into tech. Let's run into tech. My chief, there are plenty tech people. It's like, you don't understand. There are a lot of tech people. There are a lot of programmers, but there are still programmers that people are looking for. And those are the programmers that are in high demand. I saw an ad for programmers. I think it was an American company was actually recruiting. And they were recruiting for junior level programmers, mid-level programmers, you know, and then senior level programmers. And the disparity in income, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Right? So it's important to know that whatever field you've chosen, it doesn't have to be tech. Because I know that most times when people say this, what skills are in high demand now? Everybody will expect that I'll say, well, you should go for tech, you should go for data analytics, you should go for this or that, all these, very sweet, is sounding very nice in the ear. You now be ginger and your body be thinking like, I should actually go into, no, chief. If your skill is not tech, then don't do it. If you know that that's not where you're going to play, I mean, you could decide to learn it on the side, but I mean, I'm a tech person, but I'm not a technical tech person. I explain this to people. I don't code, I don't program. I'm learning to because I want to, but I don't do it as a person. In fact, I head a tech firm and I don't code. I have certain skills which I have honed to this particular point. I have skills. I can see the big picture of things. I can know how everything fits into every single thing, right? I know I have the ability to actually reach out to people. I have the ability to maintain very amazing relationships with people. I have the ability to bring people together to achieve a certain goal. I have the ability to actually get things done. If you set a project before me, I can break it down into actionable steps. And I know exactly what we have to do to get it done. Not everybody can do that. I have practiced that skill for years. I have practiced connecting with people for years. In some of my experiences, I sold software solutions. I could walk into the largest hotel chains, name them, the Sheratons, the Oriental hotels, and I would meet with high-level officers. These were people that did not know me before. I hadn't seen me before. They didn't know that I even existed. But I would walk into an organization and get meetings with the top-level staff. Right? Those were skills that I learned, and those were skills that I perfected. The ability to actually speak to people, to convince them to do stuff, the ability to persuade people to do things, particular things. These are skills that are in high demand if you actually know how to do them well. So why there are developers in my companies, my company in which I am CEO actually pays me to be CEO, right? I don't code. My job is to ensure that the company runs smoothly, and that's something I do very well. It's a very handy skill because it means that you have to be on top of sometimes a million things at the same time and ensure that every single thing is running perfectly well. And so most times when I come into meetings like this and I come into conferences, my heart goes out to the organizers because I know what it takes to organize something like this. Like to put something together to ensure that people are there and to ensure that it goes on smoothly. I know what it takes, right? I do that almost on a daily basis, right? So I don't have weekends. I don't have, every single day is just like that. Issues come up that you have to put that. That is a handy skill, right? So it's not the fact that, if you can't code, then you don't have an employable skill. No. Decide that, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the field that I want to play in. What are the necessary skills that I would need to have in this particular field? So if you are more attuned to something that is away from tech, please, by all means, go into it, but ensure that you put in your very best. That's the only way that it can work. So every single skill is in high demand. Every single skill is in high demand if you actually work on it enough. if you work on it a lot, if you're willing to give your all to it, you would be in high demand, right? So it's not rocket science. It's not anything out of the ordinary. It's just what it is. You have to be willing to put in the work. And I know a lot of times that, especially for this generation, and the people that how we've grown up, we're not always willing to put in the work for stuff. But I tell you, the honest truth is there's no shortcut. If you want to be really good at something, if you want to be employable, and you want to make the big bucks in a particular field, you are going to have to put in hours upon hours, just every single day, refining that particular skill. And then you will find out that, I mean, anything. Look at people that are footballers, the Neymars and the Ronaldos, they are not tech people, but they are earning in the millions of dollars, right? And they are playing football. I played football as a child. I'm not earning millions of dollars because of football, because I did not refine my skill enough. But those guys, their regimen, their skill is so refined that they are worth what they are being paid, right? So it's the same thing. Basketballers do the same thing. Everybody's playing with the ball, right? You can pick up a basketball now. Why is nobody paying you millions of dollars? It's because the level of skill set is not top quality yet. So pick up any skill, pick up any field at all, and then decide that you're going to give your heart to, and you will just realize that that particular skill that everybody seems to have discarded would actually catapult you to being in high demand, right? So every skill can be in high demand. Every skill is in high demand. It's just how much you're willing to apply yourself to. So I think this was years back. I made this quote and I said, skill is mastery and it's not theory, right? So it's not just about reading stuff. It's about taking the time to actually practice what you learned and practice what you read, practice the information that you consume, and ensure that you are placing yourself in comparison to global standards, not local standards, not national standards, but global standards. You're competing with with every single person else in your field, in the entire globe, not in your nation. The world has gone global. It's not a global village. So you're not just competing with the guys in your locality. You're competing with every single person in the globe who can do what you do. So when I say be the top 10% in your field, right? Be in the top 10% in your field globally. If you want to take it a notch further, you can be in the top 1% of your field globally for that particular skills. There are certain doctors that they are so rare that I think there are about 2 or 3 in the entire world that can perform certain procedures. 2 or 3 of them in the entire world that can do that. So any single time that you need that procedure done, you just need to go and call them. And whatever price that they decide to set is what you're going to pay. Because they are the only ones with the skills. They are the only ones that have that particular level of expertise. Right? So that skill is in high demand, even though it's not tech. I mean, tech is good, and you could go into tech if you feel like that's where you want to play into. But just decide that the same principle also applies. If you're going into tech, then decide to make the best of